Salutations. My name is Matthew Progress, and welcome to Our Common Thread, a structured yet organic discussion between professional costume designers Antoinette Messam, Colleen Morris, and Jennifer Bryan. They are all dynamic and successful Black women of Jamaican descent. Born in Jamaica to a family that was immersed in the creation of clothing, Antoinette Messam fell in love with fashion design early in life. She has led an illustrious career with major credits including critically acclaimed films Creed, Hold the Dark, Superfly, and most recently the Netflix original All Day and a Night. After being born in England and raised in Jamaica for 7 years, Colleen Morris got her start in London, Paris, and Milan as a fashion model. Since her transition into costume design, Colleen has decorated her resume with major credits, including the critically acclaimed biopic Bolden, about jazz legend Buddy Bolden. Growing up in Jamaica, Jennifer Bryan was drawn to her country's history of style, fashion, and design from an early age. Jennifer's big break as a costume designer began in the 90s with the hit film Major Payne, commencing an impressive list of credits ranging from Barbershop 2 to Better Call Saul. And most notably, she was honored with a Costume Designers Guild nomination for her groundbreaking work as costume designer on season 5 of AMC's Breaking Bad. I'm so happy to be here today, and I was hoping we could get started at the beginnings of your journeys and going back to how it all started, back to your childhoods. Can you describe your childhood? What are your fondest and most vivid memories of the first years of your life?
For me, I would say my most vivid memory at the beginning was when I was 4 years old and the journey from England to Jamaica. Arriving in Jamaica at night and immediately loving the country, immediately loving being outside all the time. And just the thing I will always remember when I moved there was the smiles. Everyone was so warm and friendly. And the whole reason why we left England when I was 4 years old was because my dad was determined that we would know our culture. He would want you to know your culture, which forged who I am as a person. I don't think I would be me without leaving England and going to Jamaica. I am of Jamaican descent, but I am a Yardie first.
Right.
Always, always. And that was what I got from Jamaica, is a sense of self, because you are Black, you are Jamaican, and you just know who you are. As much as I missed England, I very quickly got into the Jamaican culture, being in Jamaica, being with a large family as opposed to a very small family in England. I just loved it. I just loved everything warm. I mean, I'm coming from London, so warmth and sunshine was definitely the first things as a child I realized the huge difference, and being with family.
I have to agree with that. The family, my earliest memories are of being at my mom's shop behind our house in Montego Bay in the hills. And it was the constant traffic of friends, family, clients, talking, laughing, bringing food. It was a happy place. I have some of my happiest memories of sitting on the floor with fabrics and playing, and the helper coming to get me and not wanting to leave, because it was a really wonderful space, happy space.
I hear everybody talking about the sort of blend of climate and community, sort of creating just like a warmth in Jamaica. I'll let you answer the question as well, Jennifer.
Of course. So, when I think about that, and my earliest childhood memories, and I flash back, I see my dad pushing me on this swing that he built for me in the backyard. We had this huge plum tree. And I remember him push me and I would squeal, "Hiya, daddy, hiya, daddy." I would just go up, and it's that feeling of freedom and elevation that just basically seemed to be just around everything that I did. And it being in a really safe, happy, pretty place.
What a beautiful way to start to build an identity.
Yes.
Yeah.
So everybody mentioned family in their answer. And I had a more specific question about your family, specifically your parents. Who are your parents professionally or in the community? And what values did they instill in you?
Well, my dad was an electrical engineer. My mom was a nurse and also by profession a midwife, and worked for one of the large bauxite companies in Jamaica. And I'll tell you what they stressed to me: education. They stressed self-sufficiency. And then, being typically West Indian Caribbean, they stressed education again. And actually, when I think about it, I think it's pretty forward for my mom, because, you know, I kind of grew up in an era where, you know, young Jamaican women had a very specific path, and it usually ended up with, you know, stability was marriage and kids and family. And she kind of more veered towards education and being able to stand on your own, a certain type of independence rather than being prepared for dependence on someone else.
Amazing. Antoinette?
My father was a very hard worker in Jamaica. And then when we immigrated to Canada, he went back to school and eventually became, you know, a supervisor and foreman in the company he worked for, in charge of all the, you know, the cars, the trucks, the men who worked. But I just always remembered my father's, the structure and the hard work. And my mom, on the flip side, who I consider an artist, being really supportive of my being true to myself. I felt from an early age that my mom allowed me to be me. I was not an average child in some of the things I did. I was the Jamaican kid who wanted to climb trees, and grandmother said, come out to the trees, come in, you know, come do this. And my mother allowing me to be a tomboy and be a free spirit. And I feel my father instilled in all his children a really strong work ethic and integrity and pride in what you do. And my mother supported me in being, even from a young child, being me, being myself.
I'll just say for my parents, my dad was a very proud Jamaican man. He said you must always be seen. Never walk with your head held low. High, be proud. When you walk into the room, walk into the room. My mom was the kind of opposite. She was kind of more of a free spirit. She was, she allowed me to be me. The two first albums I bought in Jamaica was Bob Marley album, a Prince album, and a Grace Jones. And my dad just was terrified. Prince, it was Dirty Mind with the raincoat and underwear, and then Grace Jones, who terrified every Jamaican man back in the 70s. So my mom really was kind of, I want to see who this girl was going to be. And my dad was just like, Lord Jesus, who is she going to be? So I love my parents because they were very different, but they worked perfectly for me. Because my dad taught me to make sure you know what you're doing and do it with focus and finish what you start. And my mom was more of a, take your time and think about what you really want to do. You know, really think it through. Don't think of what I would want you to do or your dad want you to do. Do it and I'll support you. And she always did.
I'm hearing a real commonality of self-sufficiency, work ethic, striving for excellence, and this idea of being able to discover yourself. And it's so clear that you've all manifested that in your lives. I wanted to talk a little bit further about Jamaican identity and being a Jamaican. And Jamaican culture is iconic and recognized globally. Can you describe how your Jamaican heritage has shaped your identity specifically, apart from just in a family context, has shaped your identity or helped you to become who you are?
I think for me, the short answer to that is that there was sort of like an unspoken freedom, that there were no boundaries to what you wanted to do. So especially coming from, you know, a country that is quite, even though it's diverse, it's quite homogenous. There's more of people that look like me than the reverse when I came to this country. So I think what that did, that gave me a certain amount of internal confidence that once you migrate and you're a young woman and you're coming into, you think you know America because you see what is exported from where you are, and when you get here, it's not quite the same. And then, of course, obviously, if you're of color, it's showing the same from how you grew up.
Mhm.
But having that foundation of that there are no barriers caused by how I appear to other people, I think that really carried me through. And it was sort of like that little push at the small of your back that says, keep going, keep going. And that's what I think that did for me.
I agree 100% with Jennifer. It's our island. So leaving the island and migrating to a place where you're a minority, the transition is sometimes challenging, and that doesn't necessarily mean you lose who you are, because even though it's been many, many years, I think I'm still that very confident and very passionate young Jamaican girl inside. You know?
Yeah.
I'm hearing that collective kind of power of being able to enter a room and know who you are. And I'm immediately reminded of how important that is in the entertainment industry, and how much that must have to do with all of your success. It's the ability to enter a room of people you don't know, who may be powerful or otherwise, that you may need to work with, and have a sense of who you are and know your own power. And that's so much instilled in Jamaican culture. And I'm hoping that we can now shift a little bit into your professional lives and your career paths. And I want to know, was there a particular moment that each of you fell in love with fashion? Maybe you can start this time, Colleen.
Yeah, mine is a twofold. As in fashion design, because I'm both costume and fashion design. Fashion design, my first moment of clarity with fashion was, again, the journey from England to Jamaica, on Air Jamaica. And back then they used to have fashion shows on the flights.
Yeah.
And I was in the window seat. I was sitting with my mom, and the show started, and it was all chiffons and flowy fabrics. And my mom had to put me on her lap, and I would just watch them back and forth. And that was my first memory of loving clothes, fashion, modeling, all of that. With costume design, it was the first time I saw West Side Story. And the funny thing is, I saw it in Jamaica in black and white. And then when we came to England, we had a color television in the early 80s. And I saw it in color. And I saw the movement of the Rita Moreno dress, this lavender gorgeous dress. You know the dress.
I know.
And that was it. That was when I knew what I wanted to do. It had to be fashion, costumes, whatever. But I needed to do it. Those were my moments.
Amazing.
I think my introduction to fashion was my mom. My mother in the 60s, when we were in Jamaica, my mother used to make the most beautiful dresses, not only for others, but for herself. When my mom was ready to get dressed up, she would whip something up before she was going out, and the fabrics, the trim. And I mean, I remember later thinking, where did she get this in Jamaica at that time? Because looking at pictures that I have now of my parents' dress going to weddings, special events, you could take that picture and put it in New York or put it in Toronto. I mean, they looked current, they looked fly. My father in his sharp skin suit, which my grandfather probably made, and my mother in her beautiful, embroidered with the trim. It just never left me. And then when we got to Toronto in the 70s, what I, as someone who felt sometimes alone or in an island, I gravitated to books and magazines. I was collecting Vogue from I was like 12, 13, and just loving seeing the pictures and remembering some of the early models that Halston used to, higher and that they were Black and they represented, and, you know, wanting to be one of those people dressed like that. Yes. So I'd have to say my mom influenced me.
Wow. For me, it's so funny, Colleen, you know, I was hearing your story about West Side Story. That was also a turning point for me. The things I used to do, the first thing I remember is I remember drawing a pink dress that had, it was a pink A-line dress and it had Black lace on the border. And I took it to my mom and asked her if I could get it, if she would have it made for me. And to my surprise, she did. So that was the first thing. The second thing I also always did, you had Vogue, Antoinette, I had 17 magazine. So I would just really, I remember going to Hilo Supermarket in Kingston where all the international magazines would be. And I would just, you know, flip through the stands and grab the, you know, rare latest edition of 17 that arrived in the island. And I would get that. And that would be, I would just spend hours poring over those pages and those labels. By the time I got to the States, I knew a lot of those labels. I mean, we couldn't get them in Jamaica, but I knew these brands, I knew these styles. And that was just like my Bible. And then what I also started doing, I did this for quite a while. I loved paper dolls. Loved paper dolls. So I would cut them out. I would make my own. And so it was that West Side Story, you know, when she sang, I want to be in America. That just like, that was it. That was it. Paper dolls, 17 magazine, getting my first dress made, and West Side Story.
Amazing.
It's a weird mix, but it's true.
Oh, it all makes so much sense. Building on that, as young women with newfound passion for fashion, when did that passion turn into professional ambition? And what were some of the first moves that you each made? Maybe you could start, Jennifer.
It was, you know, it was totally coincidental for me because I did graduate from Pratt, but strangely enough, I went to Pratt first to be, to do food science and restaurant management because the practical part of what your parents tell you to be self-sufficient, I kind of tamped on my passion for, I didn't tamp down my passion for fashion, but at that point, I didn't know that it could be a real career source. So I went the practical way. I thought, okay, then maybe when I go back to Jamaica, I'd maybe run a hotel or something like that. So that's what I was thinking. But strangely enough, why did I pick an art school that has a food science program? That should tell you that unconsciously, I was trying to find my way to what I really wanted to do. And in my first semester at Pratt, I found myself over into the fashion department. I would hang out over there. I would look through the windows and see all the mannequins and see these girls, you know, doing all this stuff. And I wanted to be there. I made friends and made a little bit of history at Pratt because I became the first food science major to transfer to fashion design. And they did. They transferred me over and the rest is history. I was where, you know, I wanted to be. So I fell into it. And then from then, I ran into a friend that I graduated from Pratt with about 2 years after college. And she tells me, oh, you know, they're making movies in New York. I had no concept. I was working I had my little dream job, assistant buyer for a big retail store, department store in New York. Ran into her in my lunch hour. And she tells me about movies. They're making movies in New York and you should get a job in the wardrobe department. I didn't even know what a wardrobe department was. So I go to this producer and he, long story short, I'll make it quick. I ended up in the wardrobe department as an intern, polishing shoes.
Wow. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
It's a start.
Yes.
Yes. Antoinette?
I came through the steps of, I started modeling as a teenager and again, love of clothes wearing, but went to fashion school and I thought I was going to be a buyer. You know, everybody wanted to be a buyer in a major department store. And there was a few stores there that I felt that I was going to get a job there. But I actually, even though I focused on the business end, I loved in decorating and dressing the mannequins. So that textiles and display were my loves. And I ended up doing that out of school, is part-time working for the Bay, which is a major department store, and a small boutique. And in doing displays with draping and fabrics, someone who designed shoes approached me to help him with selections of fabrics and textiles for shoes, which was dyeables back at the time. So in a roundabout way, I'm like typical Jamaican. I have 10 jobs, you know, and in between, I'm starting to segue out of modeling because that helped pay for school, and starting to style models, my friends, on the side on weekends. So during the week, I'm working, you know, humping mannequins, working part-time for this Daba company, which actually became a full-time job for a short period. And I went to Taiwan with him on a contract to test fabrics and buy samples. But when I came back, my love was styling. And I had an opportunity to help a stylist that she doesn't realize how much she was a mentor to me, but I helped her and fell in love with it and decided to stop doing everything else and concentrate on styling, you know, which then became, I'm a mother now and need a little bit more stability. So I start buying in film. So it was just like the you know, the path that led me here, but it always came back to the love of clothes and touching clothes, whether it was display or styling a model, you know, styling a fashion show and ad, and then eventually actors, working with actors and helping tell a story with clothes.
Great.
You're making me go down memory lane. The things you're remembering as we're talking, you know?
Yeah.
It's kind of funny because I had the same start as you, Antoinette. I started modeling really young, about 15. And it wasn't a love of mine. It was a good way of making money.
Yeah.
And I find that I had the fortune of working with Azadine Alaya. And he always had a lot of girls staying in his house. And I happened to be one of the girls. And I would end up in the workshop with him, just watching him work.
Yeah.
And I have to say, to this day, it is the best lessons I ever learned about fabric, because he, very much like myself, always makes his own samples. Mm-hmm. And that's when I realized, as much as I was modeling and making good money and shouldn't be complaining about that, I realized it's not something I really wanted to do. So that's when I decided to go to school. I went to St. Martin's. Didn't particularly love it there because there weren't many people of color or people of a working class background going there. But got my education, started with Vivienne Westwood for a very short time. And then the recession hit and I had no idea what I was going to do. And then my mum was living in America at that time because my parents were divorced. And I went to go see her, went to this really cool party at the Tunnel, ran into some fabulous gay man who was like, "Oh, honey, with your sense of style, you should be a stylist." And I was like, yeah, I'll be a stylist. And I ended up being introduced to so many people that I got introduced to Jimmy Hanrahan, who was the head stylist at MTV. And that's how I started styling. And I remembered going into the meeting with him and, you know, he was describing my job and I'm like, yeah. And then he told me my rate and I was like, wow, yeah. And then he said, so, you know, that's a day your rate is per day. And my eyes I couldn't believe it. Because you know, working in England at Vivienne Westwood, I wasn't making what I made a day for the week. And that started and I was just so happy that I was still working within fashion, within clothes, doing something, even though I wasn't making anything, which I found very strange that people would pay me to buy clothes. I really enjoyed it. It taught me, I got to see so many more designers than just the ones that I worked with as a model. And I went into the big department stores and I would check out clothing, and then I would go home and make my version of it. And I have to say, working with Jimmy opened me up in such a way as a stylist and as a designer, because he then gave me, to this day I will never believe, Donna Summer. I worked with Donna Summer for a couple of years as her stylist and her costume designer. That was the first time I had the role costume designer, because I designed her tour gowns. Wow. And from then, someone was looking for a person who knew fabrics. And I was like, what's this for? And they go, it's just a little off-Broadway play. I went to go see it. It was Rent. And that was exactly. And the first time I saw that play, I just thought, holy crap, this is amazing. Because it was a play of Black people, Hispanics, gays. It was my people. So I went to work and worked with my people, same age range. And that's when I fell in love with theater from the back, not just watching it. And then that led me into television and film. And I worked as a tailor for many, many years until I met a few people who said, okay, it's time to go back to design. And I started costume designing.
And quickly for everybody, describe the difference between a fashion stylist and a costume designer.
A stylist to me is for a shoot mostly. It's mostly a photo, a moment in time. And for me, costume design is telling a story.
So you've all worked on a wide range of projects, from feature films to television to commercials. When you take on a new job, how do you first assess the project and develop an approach as a costume designer? Antoinette?
When before I'm even hired for the job, I try to do as much research as possible. I research the script that I'm given. I research the people that I'm interviewing with. I research everything, because knowledge is key. It's like you get a new Bible every job, and breaking it down, understanding the characters, deep diving into where do they live? What is their background? What is their job? What is authentic? What is organic? To then build on the fantasy, And that's my process. I just need to start from the Bible, the book, if you want to say that.
How about yourself, Jennifer?
Same thing. Process is very similar. It's like you hire yourself for the job before you get the job. Because what you have to do is a fair amount of research. Normally, one would either have a combination of several conversations and presentations, and you have to leave enough room to hear your writer and your director, producers too, and definitely actors. It's like a recipe. You have to make sure every single person at the end of that feels that their voice was heard and that you've represented their ideas in your presentation or your look or how you want to clothe that show, clothe that story. And so that's what I think we bring to it, bring to the project as costume designers. It's not just shopping and putting on a pretty dress on someone. It's deeper.
Absolutely. For me, again, also starts with research, because especially if you're doing period, it definitely is research. Because you have to research what the cut is, the colors that were used at that time, the fabrics that were used at that time. A film I did, it was set from 1885 to 1931, but there were certain things that the director did not like about the costumes of that time. So I had to remove things, but still have it look period, but slightly modernize it without you looking at it thinking, what the hell? So it's a challenging job, but it's a good one.
It just seems like there's, with each job, such a huge amount of variables, and it's really about finding that perfect equation among all the variables of that particular job.
Absolutely.
I think that's a really good segue into the next question. I know that your job, it requires a lot of research and for you to gather many different materials in between color palettes and fabrics and accessories. How do you begin to narrow down what you will use for a particular project? Antoinette, you could go first.
Start with me. Each project is different. Every project is different. And after we do the initial process of figuring out what is the story we're telling, then you start to think about what do you need for these characters, and start building closets and stock depending on, the story. But I think of it as a closet. I think of it as the person in this story, and I'm stepping into their home and their world, and what does their closet need, and building that closet that they will then dress from. The story can shift, so not only specific to scenes, I build closets that we can then on the day, or with a shift in the story, or the actor has a thought, or the director has a request, that there's things that are within the closet to dress that character.
That makes perfect sense. Jennifer?
Very, very similar. And a lot of times you really don't have a specific placement for an item that you see, but what happens is once you're into the project and it's like literally flooded in your head, everything that pertains to that period, if it's a period movie or whatever the atmosphere of the project is, every single thing that just clicks with that's all you really see. Yeah. If I'm doing a very modern, fashion-driven piece, all I see around me is things that fit that mold, because immediately I have to kind of put on blinders so I'm not distracted by a beautiful 17th century, pantaloon, because I'm not doing that. And it's very easy for that to happen. So it's almost like you get magnifying glasses, and every single thing that could possibly work in that show or script or what have you, you collect it, because our work day can be very, very fluid. We may have something approved, set, ready to go, and in the morning, 15 minutes before camera, something happens. It could be accidental, like the actor spilled coffee on this custom-made white shirt that you told him don't eat any food in it, but they went ahead and did. Or it could be a lighting situation.
That sounds specific.
Oh yeah. Do you think there's a story behind that? Yeah, there is. Because we draw from our experiences. So you learn to have backups in your closet. Yeah. And yes, and one of the secret tips is that you don't just dress the character, the story, the background for exactly as it is. You want to give yourself a little bit of practical room and creative room, because it is fluid. And every day you get on set, or every day you walk onto that stage, be prepared for something to change, and you have to be prepared for it. Everybody that you see in clothes, and most of them will be, we have to put our eyes on it. So even if it's some guy way in the background crossing the street at a traffic light, we made sure that worked in terms of what's happening more in the foreground. So it's a lot, but I think we are kind of addicted to it, and we love it, and we do it.
Absolutely. For me, I would say I'm very big into research, whether it's contemporary, because I think a lot of people think because it's a modern film, it's easy. It's not. It's not. It's actually harder, exactly, because it happens to where they're shooting. If it's LA, it's very different from New York. If it's London, wherever it is, it still needs a lot of research. Mm-hmm. And that's where I usually start from, is the research. It kind of helps me tell a story. And not only that, especially as we know, people of color, I might like this really lovely yellow, this blouse. And then someone comes in and you're like, no. It's not. So there's so much that we as costume designers have to do when it comes to dressing an actor, because you're dressing a character, but you also have to dress the actor behind the character.
Yeah.
You really do. Because if they're tall, short, big, small, whatever they are, we still have to have that vision of what we had for the character, but then we have to adjust it to the actor.
So I just wanted to shift to another kind of important question around surviving and thriving in the industry. Culture and technology are constantly evolving, and this has a major effect on the entertainment industry. Having all got your starts over 3 decades ago, how have you been able to evolve with society in order to stay relevant and in touch with the entertainment industry? And I'll give this to you first, Antoinette.
Staying current with technology, period. I mean, that's the first thing that comes to mind when you say that I feel that it's important, especially more movies are being made, bigger budgets, shorter time, different locations, sometimes shooting in multiple locations at the same time, and being able to adapt quickly and maneuver quickly is important. And for me, it's making sure that, when somebody says, oh, I don't use computers, well, how can you not in this time in filmmaking? 90% of how we communicate is with our devices, whether it be our phone, our computer, or iPad, and learning to do our jobs on location, on the go, in the moment, and being able to use those devices. I just did a short little lesson on how to do research quickly with apps on your mobile devices, because I could be standing in front of my director and he asked me about a resource or a costume or an item, and I may have to pull it up quickly and show him and know how to show him and show him how it works within what we're doing. Or just to give something quickly to your team. So I think for me, what I've had to adapt over, 30 years in this business is keeping up with technology. And am I rusty and need to go back and sit behind a sewing machine? Absolutely. But then I want to learn how to illustrate on my iPad with an app. So, you need the base, obviously, but I think it's important to stay current.
And yourself, Jennifer?
Absolutely. Technology. Look, I come from a school back in the day when we would use good old Polaroid Spectra film to take continuity photos. Yeah. Remember those days, guys?
Yeah.
And you put them on a D-ring and you clip them on your hip and you have a fanny pack.
Yeah.
Well, I've seen that to just what Antoinette just described, an instantaneousness where you have your device, whether your iPad, your cell phone, what have you, and be able to really, literally in an instant, do the kind of stuff that it used to take us days to do. And you have to make technology your friend. You have to find ways to adapt to it, even though we're in a creative craft. And then there's technology, and the two things sound like they may not work together because technology tends to be very empirical. 1 and 1 is 2, whereas we can make it look like 3 when you're creative. But what's beautiful about technology, it actually is an art. So it melds with what we do. I can't think of any endeavor in the 21st century that doesn't involve it. And if you don't use it to your advantage, you use it in research, you use it in presentation, you use it in the administration of your department. If you don't do that and get on board with it, then you will get left behind. So every way that I love anything that plugs into a wall anyway. So there, I'm good with it. Love it.
I do too. There's some aspects of it that I mean, sketching on an iPad, I will still find that difficult.
I
From my
love
creative
doing that,
sense.
Colleen. I
Hmm?
do. I don't sketch well
Yes.
on paper. I never was. So I'm like the reverse of you.
Yeah. I have to have that pencil, the sound of the pencil sketching.
Okay.
But in the sense of for everything else, yeah. I mean, I used to love breaking down scripts by hand, but now it's so much easier doing it on the computer. It breaks down everything for you in a moment.
Yes.
But you still have to go in and do your notes. So it's kind of a mixture of both.
Yeah.
Which I like, because there is that way, and then I still have to adapt it to me, to what I like. I will always have a paper copy of a script because I like it to turn the pages.
Yeah.
You know, so that you have to have both. Like you said, if you don't, you'll get left behind. You really will be, because your crew are going to need the technology.
Mm-hmm.
Do you all feel like the sort of advent of social media and people sort of moving their lives online has been helpful to costume design or more of a hindrance?
I gotta speak on this. It has been absolutely helpful. I mean, we're gonna reach people that didn't know about us, didn't know what we do. It's absolutely, I think, helpful. Now it has a little bit of a downside because sometimes you'll have people who, maybe writer, director, actor in our work world may say, well, I saw this on the internet. Can I get this? So that there's that too. But, but it still creates a dialogue. It gives you a really good foundation and source to go to. Again, it's about embracing change and having the ability, to do and use those things as you move through your career.
Yeah. I would say for me, it's been definitely helpful because it's a way of showing what I can do, not necessarily only what I've done. I don't put too much personal stuff of mine on it, but there's a lot of my work, and it definitely is an interesting way of sharing parts of ourselves that we wouldn't normally.
Social media means different things to everyone, but I'm going to say this. Social media also helps, if you use it correctly, to introduce you to people who may not know of you. And I think that's really important for young people coming up in the industry, to be very mindful of the power of social media and what it can help to do to introduce you to a community. I met Colleen. I discovered Colleen on social media. Or be a deterrent by someone, and I hate to say this, but it's happened, being turned off by your message on social media. So you have to be cognizant and aware of your choices.
Kudos to all of you for being able to adapt and thrive in such an amazing way over these years. I think this is a great moment to kind of shift the conversation over to young people. Hopefully there's a number of young people watching this. You're all such an incredible inspiration. There's so many young people interested in fashion these days. And I think the idea of a costume designer is something that a lot of young people need to know a lot more about. Before we go there, I just wanted to quickly ask how you feel about the importance of allyship and mentorship in your own path. And maybe, Antoinette, we could just have you quickly answer this one before we move on.
It's very important. I don't think I'd be here if I didn't have mentors who believed in me. I've been fortunate to work alongside people who mentored me. And I've been fortunate to have people recommend or put my name forth in different ways, even it just being a part of a conversation. And that is, those are allies. Those are people who believe in me.
I kind of allude to it like an elevator. Since I was fortunate to get on that elevator and get up to the top floor or almost to the top floor, then my responsibility up there is to push that button and send that elevator back down so that those who aspire and are inspired by what I do get a chance to get on and get up.
There was one costume designer that I worked with only one day. I worked with her one day as a tailor, and she helped me get into the costume design union. And to this day, I've only ever worked with her one day. But we had such a great day, and we kept in touch, that she's always been very helpful to me. You know, since Antoinette and I have been in touch, I've asked her too many questions.
Never too many questions.
And, you know, I think the funny thing is, as much as I am just beginning my journey, I can still help someone else.
Absolutely. And taking that a step further, for young people watching who may be interested in studying and pursuing a career in costume design or fashion design of some sort, what are your suggestions? Maybe you can start, Jennifer.
A couple of things. This industry, this craft, creative craft, it's very wide. There are many, many things you can do. So, you know, alluding to what we talked about before, the distinctions between a stylist, a costumer, a costume supervisor. The first thing I would think you would want to do is to kind of isolate what it is, which field, which subfield of costume design or styling that you want to do. Once you've identified that, then the next thing is to arm yourself with education. Kind of going back to what my parents taught me. So you want to learn it. You want to learn it as much as you can, as much information. We talked about technology, the iPad, the phone. I mean, that's literally a library that you're wearing that you have in your pocket every single day. Any free time, look up something, study something, learn something. You don't necessarily have, your education doesn't have to be formal, like going to art school or fashion design school, but it definitely requires an education. It requires you wanting a target and then target your education to that. And that, just that alone will get you in the right place.
I'd love to speak to this because I get a lot of that question. How do I get into the business, whether it be a fashion stylist or a costume designer, or just wanting, you know, I want to do what you do, Antoinette. And I'm like, well, let's get specific. The thing is that what I would love to say to our audience today is do your research. Before you even ask me, where are you reaching out to me from? Have you, Google's my best friend. Have you looked on Google to see if there's any online classes, any local schools, any internships? Like, I can't tell you what you can do in Minnesota in costumes. I've never been there. If you're asking me, then you want to work in costumes, or you want to do music videos, or you want to style. Have you stopped to check what is available to you in your immediate local, where you are right now? And when I say that, it's because I get it from all over the world. And I'm like, well, where are you? And what's available to you where you are?
If you say you want to be a costume designer or a fashion designer, look from where you are and look at the arc of how to get there. Mm-hmm. And make sure you start somewhere that's tangible. Be it working in a store, learning fabrics, learning how to do alterations. Mm-hmm. There's so many aspects of our job. Learning to dye, you know, the good thing about today, as you're watching this on the internet, there's so many classes you can take online. Mm-hmm. Don't be afraid to work for free in the beginning.
Yeah. Because
if you have nothing to offer, make sure you can't offer your time.
I was wondering if we could quickly shift the focus to designers that are more intermediate and have already started their careers. And we know that whether you're in front of the camera or behind, success in the entertainment industry is often hinged on this idea of a big break. And what advice do you have for working designers who are struggling to find their big break?
I'm very interested in this one.
Okay. Go
The
ahead.
advice that was given to me was find your community. And that's kind of the step that my next step is finding my community where I am now. I felt I had that in my last home, which was Toronto, but now I live in the US. I'm based in Los Angeles, and I'd like to start to feel like I have my community here.
Colleen.
Yeah. I that's exactly what I'm doing. You know, as an upcoming designer, I would say what I've done in the last few years is there's a few writers that I know very well. So, you know, start with short films.
Mm-hmm.
Short films is a great way of learning and getting your community. You get to know writers, you get to know directors, you get to know producers, and they'll grow with you. And then someone else will know that you did it. Someone else will see your short, and it just grows and grows and grows. So it's steps. It really is. But you'll get there.
Only just to quickly add to that also is think about, you know, a lot of it is having a map of relationships. So you probably know more people that you can associate with and link with than you realize. My big break, I still go back to that chance conversation bumping into my old school chum on West 34th Street. That actually was my big break. You have to have the wherewithal to recognize it as such and jump on it, move on it.
Absolutely.
How has your experience as Black women intersected with your career as costume designers? And how, if at all, have your experiences of racism and patriarchy in the industry changed over the span of your career? Colleen, I'll let you start with that one.
Well,
I
change.
know it's a big one. So
Yeah, changed, no. It hasn't changed.
Yeah.
You know, I'm older now. That's the only thing that's changed. I've changed, but does it make me do my job differently? No. Because let's face it, it's a part of our lives. It's what we go through every day. But as I'm older now, I find that I deal with it in a better way than I did when I was younger. When I was younger, it would crush me, especially coming from England, going to America, where racism is so much more severe than in England. In England, it's a lot more civil. You get it with a cup of tea. In America, you don't. You know what I mean? You really don't. You get it a slap across the face. I mean, yeah, it really is. And that was shocking to me. The worst I ever experienced, funnily enough, was as a costume designer, not as a tailor, because I think you're in that smaller position. Mm-hmm. So, you know, they're not threatened as much by you. But as a costume designer, it was supervisors that was my problems. They did not like, and it was in the South, they did not like me being the boss at all. Yeah. And I had to fire one particular one who would not leave because I didn't have the right to fire her. And you know, you get into situations where you always want someone else there with you, yeah, to prove that you didn't scream at this person, you weren't being intimidating, as I've been told many times. Mm-hmm. I'm 5'10". I'm a dark-skinned woman of 5'10". I am my father's child. I am always intimidating. Am I intimidating you, or are you intimidated by me? Is the question.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that you raised the point of, as your upward mobility grows, the racism grows. Do you relate to that, Antoinette and Jennifer?
First of all, we got triple whammies. We're female. Even though it is a female-dominated craft, a lot of times the ones that rise to the top and the names that you know, just like in fashion, are male. But so there's that, is female. There is, we're immigrants. That's another, you know, and of course, we're of color. And so you get, so you walk around with sort of like, they see you like a Molotov cocktail, you know, like you're just going to just like ruin their world. And it's disheartening. I was listening to Colleen's story, and I actually have two quick stories. And actually, Colleen, one of them happened in the UK, strangely enough.
Oh, no.
And I didn't get it with a cup of tea. I think she tried to maybe put a little arsenic in there or something. But I came to the UK to do I was doing this worldwide promotion of a hit Broadway show. And we were going to, major cities in Europe, South America. We landed in UK to do a little presentation on one of the morning chat shows. So I come in, costumes have flown in from whatever city we last were in. And it was this big thing with ostrich feathers that, require care and had been packaged. And I said to the supervisor, who was British, of this chat show, gave her very specific instructions on how I wanted the stuff prepped, because the actress was going to do a little song and dance on the show. She broke down in tears, because I gave her directions.
Yeah.
And did not want to take them. Literally broke down in tears. I was just like flabbergasted. I'd never seen such an outward and emotional reaction to not the instructions, but who she was getting it from.
Yes.
That was mind blowing. So that had happened. And the other time was when I was a supervisor, and I also in my Broadway days took a show out on tour, ended up in Texas, and the supervisor there, she was a local, told me that I could not share the wardrobe room with her, and refused to. And I knew why. Would not let me use the washing machines that were there, and I knew why. And literally, to make peace, the company manager made space for the wardrobe room in the boys' chorus room. And it was almost like a modern day version of sitting in the back of the bus.
Yeah.
I had those two specific things. And of course, along with that, throughout the years, the subtleties, this lack of feeling. You walk in a room merely just by the absence of nobody else looking like you. Yeah. Not enough diversity. I mean, that's it right there. The table is set. And you got to pick up the knife and fork and eat and have the meal just like they do, and stick to it.
How do you relate to that, Antoinette?
I'm listening, and even just you asking the question, my stomach started to tighten and turn into a knot. And it just kind of reminded me of what it is we go through on a day-to-day basis. I have to prepare and psych myself up to going to work, not dread having to put on the face that you have to work that much harder to make people comfortable, to make people feel that you're non-threatening, that your tone is not directed at them. I am Jamaican, I am Canadian, I have a different accent, I have a different way of presenting myself. That person over here, their tone is excused because English may not be their first language, or it's cultural, or they're not American, but the Black woman is the angry Black woman. I've always had to apologize for being expressive. This is how I talk. My hands move, I get excited, I'm loud, I'm sorry. That piece of fabric excited me. I'm not screaming at you. I'm screaming because I'm in joy that you found what I'm looking for. It's like,
yes,
like Colleen, I'm 5'9" in my bare feet. And I am 90% of the time not the only Black person in my department. I'm the only Black person on the entire crew. That has happened to me many, many times. And I've grown to live with it. It's second nature to me to adapt to their comfort level.
Yes.
Nobody cares about my comfort level. I'm never asked if I'm okay.
No.
Or do you feel comfortable, Antoinette? My needs have never been important until now. Now I'm being asked, what can we do to support you? And the first thing I've brought to the table is wanting to feel safe, to be able to speak naturally, to be comfortable. You want me to be the most creative person I can be, to deliver all that you're asking of me for this movie, this play, this whatever we're working on. But I have to compromise who I am to make all of you feel comfortable that you work for a Black woman, that you're talking to a Black woman, that Black woman is not arrogant, that Black woman is not abrasive. I'm Antoinette. And is there anything wrong with that?
Not a thing.
So I would hope that this newfound awareness is not a trend, that
Absolutely.
when they say they want to support you, or they want to hear, or they're asking how can they help, they're actually listening.
This idea of across industry, how Black folks have had to, as we may say, small themselves up for the white gaze all the time, and sort of fit into that template to satisfy everyone else. I'm curious to know, Colleen and Jennifer, if you feel like this moment, if there's any potential of us utilizing this moment to shift that in the future, or you do feel like this is more just a moment, because I know Antoinette had alluded to this conversation as well.
Well, I'd say a little bit of both, because there's definitely been a peeling back of the onion, where it is now opened out in the open. But the part that concerns me is that it is the attitude and the racism and the discrimination, whatever label you want to put to it, is so ingrained into American culture that we'll see a shift. But we need more than a shift. We need
an earthquake.
Actual earthquake moving away from this attitude. And I know, to be realistic, it probably won't come in our career lifetimes, and may not come in our lifetimes to where we could sit back when we become elders and go, you know what, that thing we did back in 2020, man, the shit's changed. It may not get to that, but if we can get enough of the so-called shift that we sense, and an openness to us, a willingness to learn and not come in with these preconceived notions of how we're going to be, like that whole angry Black woman thing, it's gotta go. They gotta let that go. We're not angry. We're working, and we want a certain amount of respect and equality. And that's the thing, the assumptions all day. By the minute you hit that gate on that lot, or you walk onto that set for that commercial you're doing, they think you are, I don't know what they think, but they got to stop thinking it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's funny because for me, I remember a few years ago, it was about 5 years ago, a friend of mine came to stay with me, and she'd known me for years, a Black woman, she'd known me for years in New York, and she was in London when I was here working, and she came into my workspace, and I was designing my collection, and she just looked at me, and she went, Colleen, I need you to stop dimming your light to let other people shine.
Ooh.
Wow.
And that was that. See, even now I'm getting the feeling. That was my moment of, you know what? Yeah. I'm sick of this. Yeah. I'm sick of making myself smaller in height, as well as in personality, as well as in talent, as well as in work, to make you feel better.
Yeah.
And that's when I stopped. And I'm hoping this moment, I agree with you guys. I don't think it will change much. I think it will make some of the people who were already aware and want to be aware more aware. I do think that. But will it change other people's ideas of us? No. I think racism is it will stay the same way it is. Who hate us will always hate us. Who appreciates us will understand us a little bit more.
Mm.
And the ones who really are there for us will really be there for us. But this is a thing that I hope it does for young Black people. Do not dim your light. Yeah. Shine your light bright. Because whether you shine your light or whether you dim it, it's never going to be dull enough for them. Especially if you're talented, if you're strong-willed, and you know what you want to do, there is nothing you can dim enough for them to be happy. Shine your light. This is on them. This is for them to do, to make the change. We've done all we can do. Now we're going to shine our light. Shine your light, women. Shine your light.
Wow.
I have goosebumps currently. Thank you so much.
My dad just came out.
I think you've all put the ball in the viewer's court right now, and that's a wonderful place for us to sign off. I want to thank you all so deeply for conceptualizing this and offering this. It was such a pleasure to have this conversation with you, so thank you.
Thank you, Matthew.
Yeah, it was wonderful. This was so great. One love.
One love. Okay. Peace out, everybody.